Thinking about what you want of President Biden, sharpness and stamina are exactly what you want. This is where I think Joe Biden wants voters to be. It's only 7%. Close enough, 24%. How about not what you want in Michigan? 69%. So if you ask voters, who do you think would do a better job handling border security and immigration, what do we see? We see that back in 2020, it was basically a dead-even split, right? Joe Biden was slightly favored on it, but not overwhelmingly. And, of course, he slightly won the election, not overwhelmingly so. Look at where we are today. In a Marquette University Law School poll that was put out last month, look at that advantage that Joe Biden has on, that Donald Trump has on immigration and border security. It's near 30 points. This is a tremendous change that's going on.
Why don't the American people either believe it or feel it?
Well, first of all, I think that we've been through a very difficult time. I mean, you guys were talking a little bit earlier about the insurrection. Just think about what happened to this country when Donald Trump was in office. Joe Biden's not waiting. Y'all all remember that 3 weeks ago, all y'all had this man halfway in the grave, and he showed up at the State of the Union in real time.
I didn't have him halfway in the grave, but the states did. They did. They're trying to take Joe Biden out. Hold up. Let me finish. Let me defend my candidate. Showed up in real time and basically said, I'm here. Where are y'all at? And then since that time has traveled across the country to Wisconsin, Nevada. He's been to Arizona. He's been to Georgia. He is out there swinging with a big stick and actually bringing the receipts. He's not just talking.
Would you consider this an invasion? And is there more we could be doing with respect to pressuring Mexico?
I don't think it's an invasion. It is an immigration crisis. It's a national security issue. But I think you got to be careful throwing around words like invasion. It was that kind of wording that led the deranged guy to go shoot up the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh, killing folks a couple years ago. And I think that kind of rhetoric is irresponsible.
Are you concerned about that, about the potential dangerous people or potential terrorists who may be infiltrating the country because you are so focused on processing asylum seekers, families, and others who are in distress?
Absolutely. That's you ask any law enforcement officer, especially somebody that works in border security, that is what keeps us up at night. We're at closing in on 1 million entries this fiscal year alone. That number is a large number, but what's keeping me up at night is the 140,000 known gotaways.
That is not part of that tally.
That is not part of that tally. And that's just what we know.
Is that a national security risk?
That is a national security threat. Border security is a big piece of national security. And if we don't know who is coming into our country and we don't know what their intent is, that is a threat. And they're exploiting a vulnerability that's on our border right now.
Did you watch that border video down in El Paso? And does that send a message to Americans that the border is secure?
We are very clear, and I think most Americans are clear that we have a broken immigration system and we need to fix it.
And so what's happening is, if you know anything about United States immigration law, it says that you can present yourself at any port of entry for asylum. That doesn't necessarily mean just the Texas border, even though that's all we ever talk about. You can present yourself anywhere within the United States and say, hey, I'm here seeking asylum. And so now you have migrants that may be afraid of Texas law enforcement telling them the wrong things, doing the wrong things, or the fact that they're saying they're going to arrest them. It's really just not that complicated. It's just a matter of telling Greg Abbott that he needs to stay in his place. And if he wants to practice federal enforcement of immigration law, then maybe he should run for president of the United States. But until then, he is a governor in the state of Texas, and this is not state jurisdiction.
I think that what we are dealing with politically is the much larger and much more grave and serious pressure of having this judgment against Donald Trump and him being in this degree of debt and the financial pressures that he is under and what he is subject to do in order to obtain those assets. I actually think that there is risk in not seizing these assets and the open window that exists in him trying to secure these funds through other means. We've seen a lot of interesting transactions happening with Truth Social and other means, and there's a very real risk of political corruption.
That's 5 cases. And to a voter, what do you say to a voter who says, well, that doesn't look like he's being treated equally before the law? That looks like somebody that the government is going after.
Has there ever been a president, Republican or Democrat, that has been subject to this level of criminal charges, indictments, and investigations? This is not about party. This is not about politics. This is about corruption and criminality.
Sure. But what I'd like to say is to remind our Republican members that the United States told Russia, we had a duty to warn Russia when our intelligence showed the risk of this attack. And we did just that, even though Russia is at war, an illegal war against Ukraine. I think it's rather facile that the two Republicans talk about the withdrawal of Afghanistan to blame somehow the Biden administration for the attack in Russia by ISIS.
We've also got to go upstream. We've got to make sure that the automobiles are not so easy to steal so that they're a tempting, attractive nuisance for young people. And, right now we are investigating two major automakers because their cars are dramatically too easy to steal for young people.
Our first call comes from Scranton, Pennsylvania. Joe on our line for Democrats. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.